everyone. Welcome back to Web3 Deep Dive Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wolfson. In today's episode, I'll be speaking with Perianne Boring. She is the CEO and founder of the Chamber of Digital Commerce. In this episode, we'll be speaking all about regulations in the United States and how the Web3 space may look moving forward in terms of regulatory clarity. Before getting started with the interview, I also want to let you guys know to please take the time to like the content that you're seeing today and to subscribe to my channel. Your support means everything, so I would really appreciate it if you would just take a few minutes to do that. I also want to thank EduNode and the House of Web3 for letting me film today's podcast at this beautiful studio here in San Francisco. Without further ado, let's get started with today's interview. Hey, Perianne, how's it going?
Hey, Rachel, good to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining the podcast. I'm so excited to finally have you on the show.
I know, I was excited for my my debut. It's been a long time coming.
I know. So Perianne, before we get started with today's interview, I want you to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you're doing at the Chamber of Digital Commerce.
Yeah, well, I've been in the crypto space since very early days. I first learned about Bitcoin in 2011 when I was working on Capitol Hill. My background is in public policy. I've spent all of my career working in DC on public policy. I also worked as a journalist for a short amount of time as well. So my interest in cryptocurrencies really came from an economic policy perspective. I was working as an aide on Capitol Hill and really advocating for a more sound money. You know, I went to DC after the financial crisis and really felt like there were some systemic issues in our financial and our economic system, and I wanted to fight for something better. The economic crisis really impacted my community. I'm a native Floridian, and everybody I knew was impacted by, what was going on in the economy. And when I was in school, I really wanted to, since I was studying economics, like, well, what's happening in the economy in real time? And it was just so insane to me that really none of our economic PhD professors could really actually explain what was happening real world in the economy. Mm-hmm. So I kind of went on my own independent study and I learned about how money works. I learned about the gold standard, fiat money, inflation, what it is, how it impacts people, how it impacts us. Learned about how the banking system works, how it's regulated, although I'm still learning about all these things every day. But there are a lot of things that I just didn't feel like represented my values as an American. It's like, how could we have gotten to, this situation with the financial crisis? So I went to DC to fight for something better. And that's really what I've been doing ever since. And I learned about Bitcoin on that journey. And I felt that Bitcoin was a technical solution to so many of the things that I was advocating for working in public policy. So that's how I got in it. We launched the Chamber of Digital Commerce in 2014. We were the first trade association in the country to advocate for the Bitcoin and the blockchain community. Although the word blockchain was not used back then. You had Bitcoin with a big B to represent the protocol and Bitcoin with a lowercase b to represent the currency. And there were many people that talked about how the protocol, the blockchain, many different types of applications would be built out of this beyond just Bitcoin as a currency. And that's really what the Web3 community is. It was all inspired by all of that in the early days. And I felt like it was incredibly important for this decentralized technology that doesn't have a CEO, it doesn't have a public policy shop, to have a voice in DC, to make sure that we would have the chance for this technology to grow and thrive in the United States. So that's why I'm here. And we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. We're turning 10 this summer. And we're in the fight of our lives, Rachel. It's insane. When we first started, most people just kind of thought we were crazy, had no idea what we were talking about. Now everybody knows that we're talking about us, and we have lots of champions and we have enemies. There's an anti-crypto army out there, and they don't want us to exist. They don't think we should have a right to be here, and we're fighting for that right. And I'm more than happy to do that because I believe in this technology, and I'm having a lot of fun with it, actually.
Good. Well, we all have to keep fighting, this fight. And we've seen so much innovation happen over the past years. I mean, you said the Chamber of Digital Commerce was established in 2014. Look at how far we've come now in terms of innovation. So it's people like yourself and others that are innovating in the space that are helping, push along what we've seen in the past years. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah. Perrianne, can you talk a little bit? And I want to go back. You said the financial crisis, you were talking about 2008.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's what I thought. Let's talk a little bit about the Chamber of Digital Commerce, because it's really interesting, and it's interesting why you established it. So in the beginning in 2014, how exactly were you educating or fighting for Bitcoin, or what did it look like then and what does it look like now?
Oh my God, it looks so different. I worked as a staffer on Capitol Hill, and I left the Hill to work as a reporter. So I was working as a journalist, and I was covering Bitcoin actually during that time. I was one of the first people as a journalist to cover Bitcoin.
Wow. And
that's really when I started getting just completely, just spending all my time thinking about, how incredible this technology is going to be and how much of an impact it's going to have. Although not very many people were convinced of that at the time. So we started the Chamber in 2014 to work on policy. And one of the funny things, you have to remember, the biggest scandal of that era was Silk Road and Mt. Gox. Like the biggest, scandal of the era today was SBF and FTX. Obviously, horrific. There's been a lot of scandals, but that was probably the most prominent one. But back in 2013, everybody was talking about Silk Road, a multi-billion-dollar digital, internet platform. It was a retail platform where people were buying and selling all sorts of goods and services. People were buying a lot of drugs using Bitcoin. That was kind of the first use case, or the first thing that at least hit the mainstream papers. That was taken down by the feds. Of course, Ross is still in jail. There's like a whole movement of people who are still trying to get him pardoned all these years later. So everyone just thought that Bitcoin was the currency of choice for criminals. And that's all anybody knew. Or they read about Mt. Gox, because that was also another massive publicity issue, black eye, when Mt. Gox collapsed. At the time, it was the largest bankruptcy in Japan's history. This was a company based in Japan. They lost almost $500 million worth of customers' Bitcoins. And the headlines in the news were Bitcoin was hacked or Bitcoin died. It's like, no, a company was hacked. Bitcoin is not dead. A bunch of Bitcoin was hacked and stolen. So you meet with people on the Hill, and that's literally all they thought. I think some of my old friends thought I was a drug dealer. They're like, what are you doing at these Bitcoin meetups? I'm like, it's not like that, I swear. But it was just so, it was so sketchy at the time. And I could only get one member of Congress to actually meet with me. I think the first year, I could meet with staff, but to actually get in front of a member of Congress, one of the first member of Congress that I ever met was Mick Mulvaney, Congressman Mick Mulvaney from South Carolina, who went on to have a pretty incredible political career. He went to lead the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and then he became President Trump's chief of staff. So he went all the way to the top, and now he serves on our advisory board now that he's not serving in office anymore. And it was a leap of faith for him. It was and he co-founded the Blockchain Caucus. He set it up with Jared Polis, who's now the governor of Colorado. We helped him do that. Now there's over 40 members in the Blockchain Caucus. Today, most people are aware. They know cryptocurrencies exist. They've heard about it. And the current state has become very political, particularly after Sam Bankman-Fried gave tens of millions of dollars of what was probably stolen customer funds as political donations. It's turned into a huge, like, a lot of politicians don't want anything to do with crypto because a lot of them accepted money from SBF, and that ended up being a huge, risk for them.
Right.
So we still have many members of Congress that are champions for crypto in the United States today, but there's also a number who are incredibly critical and skeptical. So it's really important today that the community is actually a part of the conversation and is participating in the political process. So a lot of people probably are not aware that there's a huge movement to ban crypto in Congress, and it's gained a lot of steam just in the past couple of months.
It's interesting you say that because, and I've been in the industry since 2017, so I got in after you, but I've always had that thought, like Bitcoin and crypto, especially Bitcoin, it's not going anywhere. People are like, oh, when prices went down, are you going to sell your Bitcoin? It's going to go to zero. And I've always been a hodler. I've always believed in Bitcoin. I've never for once doubted Bitcoin. It's like you said, sound money. And for me, it's like, it gives me financial freedom for the first time in my life, just holding Bitcoin. And it's interesting that you say there's a lot of enemies trying to shut crypto down or that are against Bitcoin because I see what I see in the news, but you probably see more. So maybe you want to elaborate a little bit on that. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, well, let's talk about what's actually happening. So Senator Elizabeth Warren, she has self-proclaimed herself as the head of the anti-crypto army. I'm not sure if there's any official members of the anti-crypto army, but this is all over her campaign page. So she likes to promote it for political purposes. So she introduced a bill, S2669. It's called the Digital Asset Anti-Money Laundering Act. This bill, she's represented it. So this is what she's doing. If you ever watch any of the hearings, the Senate hearings, the things she's talking about, I see her give statements or speeches. She loves to. Political theater is like her favorite pastime. She's a master at it. She's going around saying that cryptocurrencies have an AML problem. She is perpetuating that narrative. And she will use any tools she has to try to prove that point. Of course, we know that is absolutely retarded because cryptocurrencies are all logged on a public ledger. And if you were trying to conceal your financial tracks, literally the dumbest thing you could possibly do is print them on an unalterable and public ledger. Criminals are not flocking to cryptocurrency for that exact reason. In fact, a lot of criminal enterprises have even put out public statements saying, do not send us, like, to their donors, do not send us anything in cryptocurrency so we can protect your identity as an anonymous donor. But there have been instances where cryptocurrency was part of something nefarious. It's not that there's no illicit activity has ever touched a blockchain. That's not the reality. But less than 1% of all transactions that flow through all cryptocurrency networks, less than 1%, it's about 0.3%, like 3 basis points of the entire cryptocurrency economy is in any way, shape, or form affiliated with illicit activity. So it's like this much. And the traditional financial system, the United Nations estimates it's anywhere between 2 to 5% of GDP. So the mass majority of any type of illicit activity is going through the traditional financial system, including banks and cash. Cash is still king.
Right.
But if there was, a big story in the Wall Street Journal that Hamas had used cryptocurrency, and they did. But it was a small fraction of the total amount of funds that they had collected. And Hamas had even stopped accepting cryptocurrency donations for that exact reason I mentioned earlier. But she used that article to go tell a bunch of senators that, hey, like crypto has an AML problem. See this article in the Wall Street Journal. That article ended up having to be corrected. But it didn't matter because she had already, been through this, political theater and convinced a bunch of people crypto did have an AML problem and that her bill fixes the problem.
Interesting. And AML, by the way, is anti-money laundering. For listeners that don't know, I just want to point that out.
Yeah, like illicit finance laws. So the first kind of misleading political theater that we're seeing is this idea that crypto has an illicit finance problem. That's false, but she's perpetuating that. The second, she has this bill. She's like, and my bill fixes the problem. Sign on to my bill, sponsor my bill. And the bill, if you read it, I can kind of walk you through what it does, but effectively it would ban cryptocurrencies in the United States. That's not what the words on the page say. It doesn't say we're banning crypto. It defines certain things in crypto in our space, and it defines them under the Bank Secrecy Act and says they have to comply with the same type of financial reporting that financial institutions have to abide by, like banks. Mm-hmm. So this includes self-hosted wallets. That a self-hosted wallet would be regulated like a financial institution. It also says Bitcoin miners, any kind of node validator would be subject to financial reporting requirements. Mm-hmm. Of course, if you are mining Bitcoin, you do not have the name, the address, the social security number of the transactions affiliated with the transactions you're verifying, because that's not how it works. That information does not exist. So because you couldn't collect this information and report it to the government, you could not run a legal Bitcoin mining business in the United States. Same thing with self-hosted wallets. Same thing with anybody doing acting as a node validator. Mm-hmm. Which means which means it's a backdoor ban.
Right. What's the name of the bill? Like its proper name? I know you mentioned 2016.
Yeah, it's the Digital Asset Anti-Money Laundering Act. Okay.
That's
and
what I thought.
Its number is Senate Bill 2669.
Cool. Okay.
We just call it the crypto ban bill because that's what it is. And it's unfortunate because over 19 members have signed on to this bill. There's 20 members, or there's 100 members of the Senate. Mm-hmm. There's 19 sponsors. So roughly 20% of the Senate today is on record with wanting to ban cryptocurrencies in the United States. That is the current state of crypto regulation in the United States.
Right. That's actually really scary. I hope that doesn't give me nightmares tonight, but that is really scary. But my question is, we recently saw in the United States the approval of a spot Bitcoin ETF, which, I think has been great for the industry. What are your thoughts? I mean, that was approved by the SEC. So does that, how can they ban crypto after that? Right.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
It's a good point. So the ETF story is just a whole different saga. So you also have to appreciate what it had to take to bring a spot Bitcoin ETF to market. And of course, a spot Bitcoin ETF is going to lay the foundation for other cryptocurrency spot ETFs to come to market. And we do expect to see an ETH spot Bitcoin, an ETH spot ETF and many other crypto spot ETFs over time. Okay. It took 10 years to get a spot Bitcoin ETF. We several years ago did a very deep study to try to understand why. We issued a report called the Crypto Conundrum. You can Google it or go to our website if you are interested in reading it. But the SEC, in our report, we make the case that the SEC was discriminating against Bitcoin as an asset class, holding Bitcoin to a different standard than any other commodity ETF, and that it was acting arbitrary and capricious. So one of the issuers, which was Grayscale, of course, sued the SEC for arbitrary and capricious behavior, and they won. And because they won, that is ultimately what put the SEC in a position where they had to bring and approve spot Bitcoin ETFs to market. But they did it very begrudgingly. So that's why we have a spot Bitcoin ETF today. It was an incredible path to get there. We did a lot of work behind the scenes. I mean, we took our report to every single member of Congress, all 535 members of Congress. We took our report to, like, you need to read this. The SEC is completely out of bounds. They're not within their statutory authority. This is, not just a concern if you care about Bitcoin. This is a concern if you care about anything going through the markets. We must hold the SEC accountable. They should not be picking winners and losers. This is, bad for innovation. This is bad for technology. It's bad for the U.S. markets. And that put a lot of pressure on the SEC as well, because we had a lot of members of Congress all saying, what is going on over there? Bringing the SEC in to testify, forcing them to, ask, questions about how they're handling spot Bitcoin ETF. So that political pressure, all was a lot of the stuff happening behind the scenes to get us there. But it was an unbelievable feat. So, your question was, how could they just approve a spot Bitcoin ETF? It sounds like a great development, but you have to understand that they really didn't want to, and they fought until the bloody end. They were kicking and screaming all the way until the very end, until they finally got approved.
Right. So what is the Chamber of Digital Commerce doing to kind of prevent this S2669 bill from passing?
We're doing absolutely everything we possibly can. So the good thing for us as a community is one, that Elizabeth Warren has really misrepresented the bill. And I believe she's completely misled the U.S. Congress and the American people on this topic because she's saying crypto has an AML problem. That's just factually incorrect. She's saying this bill fixes the problem. That's factually incorrect. It's a ban. It's not a regulatory fix. It's just wrong. Most members of Congress, Congress gets a bad rap, but, I've spent all of my career working in or around Congress, and, most members of Congress, I want to believe, ultimately are there and they want to be involved in good policy making. And they want to do the right thing. And because we've met with every single one of the members that sponsored this bill, and a lot of them were very surprised to learn that the bill was actually a ban. They didn't understand it until someone walked them through it, until we walked them through it. So we are trying to meet with every single member in U.S. Congress to explain this to them. It takes time. There's 535 offices to meet with. We're a team of about 12 people. We're making the rounds, as fast as we can to educate them before Elizabeth Warren gets to them, to say hey, if Elizabeth Warren calls you and she wants you to sponsor this bill, just make sure you fully understand what you're signing up for. We've prevented a lot of members from signing on because of that. So we're doing a lot of the hard work on the ground, that just education and advocacy, just being that resource to our public policymakers, helping them make sure they fully understand all the laws and potential regulations and what it can mean, and ensuring they're making informed decisions. And we need help with that. So, part of the reason why I'm, coming, on your podcast, and I've, been sharing this information on social media and any other outlets I have, is we need the community to be a part of this conversation. This is more than a job that I can do by myself. We need the whole community calling Congress, calling their members, saying, do not sponsor this bill. We do not want to ban crypto in the United States. And if we don't do that, if we don't advocate for ourselves as an industry, we have everything to lose. So I really do urge people to participate in the political process. It may seem, I know a lot of people in our space are kind of anti-government or want a limited government. And I do. I'm a limited government person myself. And that's exactly why I do what we do. But we really do need the whole community helping us to stop this.
When you say, like, I mean, for instance, if I wanted to help, and I do want to help because obviously I've been in this industry for a while and I don't want to see a ban on crypto, how exactly can I do that? I mean, I'm not in DC. I don't have the access to people like you do in the Chamber of Digital. So how could I, as an individual, and how could the listeners actually go about that?
Well, we try to, make this as easy as possible for the community. We are going to host Blockchain Education Day on May 16th. The entire community is invited. We will set up a meeting for you to meet with your representatives in Congress, so you can go tell them directly your position on this bill or any other positions pending before Congress. So the whole community is invited to DC. That's Blockchain Education Day. If you're interested in participating, we'll set you up. You can do it on your own. You don't need us to do it. You can just do it on your own. You can also look up who your congressional representative is. If you go to congress.gov, just type in your zip code. They'll tell you who represents you in your district. Call their office, send them an email, write them a letter, put your position on record. Go to town halls. If you have any viewers, so there's 19 members of this bill. And, senators represent an entire state. So many states are represented on this bill. Go to the town halls of these senators. Like, if we could get people across the country showing up to the town halls and asking on record, because they always do these Q&As, they take questions from the community. Ask them, like, what the hell are you thinking? Why are you on this bill? Put them on record, make them respond. If we can get the whole community participating in this stuff and putting these people on record, why are you trying to ban crypto? And then they actually feel the pressure of, well, maybe this wasn't the best idea. One of the things that we have heard from some of the political strategists that we work with is that some of these members who signed on to this bill thought crypto was a throwaway issue, meaning they're doing this bill as a favor to somebody else. It totally throws crypto under the bus, but they're like, well, there's no crypto industry. Nobody cares about crypto. All I know about crypto is SBF and FTX, and that was like a whole fraud and a scam, and the whole industry is a fraud and a scam. So like, yeah, I'll totally sign on this bill and like throw crypto under the bus because like nobody cares. We do care, and that's our job as the community to show up and say, no, like that's not. You can't outlaw an entire industry. And by the way, this is the industry that's going to fix most of the major problems in our financial system today. So those are all some things that like we can all do. And, and of course we invite everybody to come to DC and help us on the ground as well.
Definitely. Well, I want to be there. So I'll make a mental note of that May 16th in DC. So expect to see me there.
Great.
Because I want to help, obviously. And I think coverage is really important. I wanted to ask you now, in terms of like, what's the most, you mentioned the Bitcoin mining thing in the bill and how that may be misunderstood. What's another element that you think people misunderstand that they need to actually like understand better before signing onto this? Does that make sense?
Well, I think they just need to understand that it's effectively a backdoor ban. The way that the bill is written, it puts regulatory requirements on a technology and that are impossible to implement.
Got it. Yeah.
It's like trying to take blockchain technology and then regulate it like a bank. It makes no sense. Like it's software. It's not a company. It's just not going to work. That's what they're trying to do with the bill. So it's completely unworkable. It's not like, oh, they got, this section wrong and we can like tweak that and then it's going to work. No, it's completely unworkable. It is a backdoor ban. And Elizabeth Warren knows that. She is, I think she's smart enough to fully understand what she's doing. She's done this very smart. It's theater. It's all about the narrative. And she's convinced people crypto has an AML problem. Her bill fixes it. And then next thing you know, it's like you've outlawed an industry and you tricked all these people into supporting that and voting for that. Now we're all screwed. We can't let that happen.
Right. I mean, it's like you said, a lot of it seems like, the whole FTX, SBF drama, and maybe that just kind of changed people's mindsets in the United States 100% on hating crypto. And they don't realize that the technology behind it is actually revolutionary and that it can revolutionize traditional financial systems and a whole lot of industries, supply chain management. It's like they don't think about the technology. All they think about is FTX. I think that's where a lot of this confusion is coming from.
Or they do think about it and they realize all of the legacy systems that it's going to displace, and or or they want something else like a central bank digital currency, and having cryptocurrency where you can self-custody and you don't need the central bank to to operate is just completely incommensurate with that vision. And so I do think this is also a part of a much larger political strategy to pave the way for a central bank digital currency in the United States. And I think those who are pushing that agenda don't believe there is a space for cryptocurrencies in that future.
Is Elizabeth Warren pushing for, I mean, maybe this is a silly question, maybe I should know the answer. Is she pushing for a central bank digital currency?
I think you could argue through this bill that she is. I mean, that's kind of the argument that I'm making right now. Instead of having to go on record for a CBDC, which is a little like politically untenable today, just make sure you're clearing everything out that would, kind of get in the way of that future vision.
Right. And now it's interesting because I've been seeing, Trump is saying he will not do a CBDC if elected. And so I think he's just trying to get a lot of I don't know, we probably shouldn't get too political, but he is saying that. And I'm sure a lot of the crypto community they're probably like, yay.
Yeah, he did say that recently. Also, that was the stance of Florida Governor DeSantis, who was also running for president, he didn't really have a cryptocurrency platform, but if anyone asked him about cryptocurrency, he would say, oh yeah, well, I'm against CBDCs and, we're against it in the state of Florida. That was kind of his answer. And that's kind of what Trump's answer seems to be right now too. But cryptocurrencies and CBDCs are also two completely different things. And so I think we also need to be careful that just because someone is pro CBDC, it doesn't necessarily mean they're anti-crypto. Maybe they are, but I just don't think they're correlated because they're two completely different things. Many people who are anti-CBDCs are pro-crypto, but that's not necessarily a rule. It certainly doesn't have to be a rule. What's more important is that we understand politicians' actual position on cryptocurrency. If you care about CBDCs and it's important to you that members of Congress or the president of the United States does not support that, and you're not going to vote for somebody, you want to get them on record. But for me, what I'm most interested in is policymakers' stance on cryptocurrencies. So I think with DeSantis and Vivek and others dropping out of the Republican primary, it's absolutely critical that we get Trump's current stance on crypto. Because the Trump administration's track record was not very pro-crypto at all.
Right. Exactly.
He was not pro-crypto. There were a number of things that the Trump administration did that were anti-crypto. The Trump administration tried to regulate self-hosted wallets, which is exactly what the Elizabeth Warren bill does as well. They tried to bring a similar set of regulations that would essentially make it impossible or illegal to self-custody in the United States. That was the Trump administration. That was just one example. Trump himself put out a tweet saying he was skeptical, saying he didn't like Bitcoin. He was not a fan of cryptocurrencies. And Trump's chairman of the SEC, Jay Clayton, did not do us any favors at all. That is the person who filed the lawsuit against Ripple. He blocked spot Bitcoin ETFs just as much as Gary Gensler did, and he did absolutely nothing to help achieve the regulatory clarity that we need as an industry in order to operate cryptocurrency businesses in the United States, something we've been asking for many, many years. And we absolutely went to Jay Clayton's office many, many, many times asking him, please issue rules, regulations, clarify the SEC's jurisdiction over the cryptocurrency space. Completely uninterested. So it is really important that Trump gives an updated he shares with us his updated position on cryptocurrencies, because people are wondering, and I certainly am.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, yeah, we can elaborate on that, but I'm not going to. I want to get your take on why cryptocurrency in the United States and why innovation here is so important. Because, and I'm sure people have asked you this because they've asked me, well, why don't you just move to Europe or, somewhere where it's a little bit more friendly for cryptocurrency and blockchain? But, I continue to stay in the United States. What's your take on that? Why is it so important for innovation to happen here?
Well, this is the land of the free. And I think, particularly in our generation, I mean, the United States is the most prosperous nation in the world, and we have been for a couple of generations now. We are so spoiled, we don't even fully understand how good we have it as Americans. Just having food, water, and shelter, and just stability every single day. That's certainly not the case, especially if you look around the world and all the wars that are being fought right now. We're incredibly lucky. And we're at the very top of the pyramid. We have everything to lose. One of the most important things that's happened to the United States in recent history was the advent and commercialization of the internet. The United States government invented the ARPANET, the internet, came out of DARPA. And then the White House helped commercialize it. They put out an executive order incentivizing the private sector to develop and commercialize the internet technology. And this took several decades. I mean, it took years, for these .com internet businesses to be built. The biggest companies in the world today are companies that came out of that. Your Facebook or Meta, Amazon, Google, Yahoo, we can keep going down the list. These are, American businesses that have benefited the United States of America. They've benefited the people here. They've provided jobs, and that innovation, that development is here. Imagine if the United States had taken a completely different tone, and taken the tone it's taking on cryptocurrencies and just trying to push it out. We don't see value in this technology, and we don't want it here. So what if Facebook and Amazon and Meta, Google, what if these were all businesses that were built in Russia? Where would the United States be today? Right. If that's how we treated the internet? And there's a reason it's called Web3. It's like the next coming of, it's like the next internet. This technology is going to be just as impactful as the internet was. Why wouldn't we want Americans to benefit from that?
Definitely. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that makes perfect sense. Perianne, we're running out of time, and I could talk to you for much longer than the time that we have, but I want to know what's next from the Chamber of Digital Commerce. Like, what can we expect next? Can we expect reports? I know you mentioned the conference in DC, but what else is upcoming?
Yeah, our conference, the DC Blockchain Summit, is May 15th. So we'd love for the whole community to come and support the industry in Washington, because it's, if we don't advocate for ourselves, nobody else is. And then the day after the conference, May 16th, that's Blockchain Education Day. So come to the conference. We'll take you to the Hill. And we'd love for you and everybody else to join us in Washington. Another thing we're working on is on NFTs. So we've really gotten very deep in NFTs in the past couple of years. We're seeing incredible innovations from the biggest brands in the world, building really interesting projects that are going to completely change the digital experience for customers, for users, and for people. And, we talk about regulations. Of course, that's what a big part of my focus is and what we're doing at the chamber. But we need regulatory clarity for NFTs as well. And we're leading a working group at the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, to develop best practices for NFTs. So we're actually working in partnership with the regulators to help create kind of the initial set of best practices that will really set the stage for future regulations for NFTs. And we're working with some big brands and many amazing innovators as well. So NFTs is something we're super interested in, and we're looking to collaborate with the whole community on this. So if you're interested, you can ping me or DM me or go to our website, and we're looking for more contributors to help us develop this product.
That's interesting that you mentioned NFTs, and now that I keep seeing at least headlines in the media, NFTs aren't dead and they're making a comeback. I think for a while, like NFTs were kind of out of the spotlight, non-fungible tokens for those that don't know what an NFT is. But yeah, it's interesting that we're talking about regulations around NFTs now. I mean, honestly, I really hadn't thought about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. There was a big like NFT like boom and bust a couple years ago. There were a lot of like rug pulls in NFTs. We were seeing a lot of like weird stuff, a lot of scams, which is normal for any new technology. But beyond, underneath the surface, there's many industries that are innovating with this concept of a non-fungible token and trying to use it to enhance different business services. There's companies that are currently looking to use NFTs or issue a unique token to track products for supply chain purposes. You have a digital identifier of all of your products. There's companies that are creating whole, entirely new digital experiences for their customers. Pepsi they don't call it an NFT, but they have an entire division that they're essentially issuing NFTs to bring more, engagement through their customer base. But it's not kind of what I think most people think of as an NFT, as like a PDF on chain or a piece of art on chain. It's allowing for new engagement, with different types of tools and audiences. We saw Tiffany's issued NFTs. They built these like really beautiful necklaces of CryptoPunk. So anyone who has a CryptoPunk can get a Tiffany's CryptoPunk necklace, and you had to have the NFT to get it. So I mean, there is some really fun and interesting things above, I think, the initial use case of like putting art on a blockchain, which of course we still believe in that as well. But now that big companies and big brands and, lots of money has gone into developing the technology, we're starting to see initial products come to market, and there's some really exciting stuff out there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to keep that in mind. Cool. So Perianne, is there anything you want to add before we end the interview today that I might not have asked you about?
I think that's everything. I was going to tell you, I'll be in Austin for South by Southwest. So I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's funny because I'm actually back in San Francisco now, but I do plan to be in Austin for South by Southwest. So I hope to meet up with you and a bunch of other of the, the Web3 community there, because a lot of people are going to be there then.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
Cool. Perianne, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, how can they do that? Do you use Twitter? I mean, I know you use Twitter, but how can they reach you?
Yeah, I'm active on Twitter. My handle's @PerianneDC. Or you can go to the Chamber's account. It's just @DigitalChamber, or go to our website at digitalchamber.com.
Cool. And that's also how they can probably get involved with this initiative to fight this S2669.
Yes. Please join us. We need help.
Cool. Okay, Perianne. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for finally coming on the podcast, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Rachel. Great to be here.
Thanks. Special thanks to Aaron Bender for producing Web3 Deep Dive podcast. I'd also like to thank the sponsors behind Web3 Deep Dive. Finally, thanks to the listeners for tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and share. I'll see you guys next time.